Good morning, beautiful people. Welcome, welcome, welcome. This is Friday. What are we? January. I have to look at my calendar. January 21st. Oh my God, 3 weeks of January is over. And so I am streaming live here on my Facebook group, The Intimacy of Race, but also streaming live on YouTube and my personal page as well, because this is something that's very important to me, very near and dear to my heart. And it's the Minority Business Spotlight, where I get to spotlight minority business owners to showcase not only their business, to give them a platform to use their voice, but also to have them share their experience of being a minority. From my perspective in the United States and maybe in another country, and how that has impacted their life and their business. Because the more we know, the more we can show up more powerfully as allies. And part of being an ally is really using our platforms to share and highlight the voices of minorities. So I would like to welcome to the Intimacy of Race, Alpana Aras-King. And I'm going to read a little bit of her bio here. So Alpana is a visibility coach and a brand photographer. She does amazing photography, guys. And she combines strategy and creativity to help purpose-driven women, entrepreneurs, leaders, and professionals unleash their inner star to become the face of their brand so that they can increase their impact, influence, and bottom line. So as an immigrant and person of color, she's passionate about turning her lens on issues of diversity through her personal and professional photography. Her work with the Everyday Bay Area Collective has drawn attention to the untold stories of people on the margins, humanizing those that look different to create acceptance and social change. Her vast experience ranges from top Indian ad agencies, a master's in instructional design, San Francisco's Academy of Art, and the glass-paned offices of major U.S. corporations. So I am so excited to welcome Alpana to the Intimacy of Race today. Welcome. I'm so happy to have you here.
Oh my gosh, thank you so much, Eva. It's such an honor to be here with you.
Yeah, yeah. And so, you and I actually met pre-COVID and made a connection and made an intention to get to know each other better, and have moved in some of the similar circles in the coaching world. So I want you to tell people a little bit about yourself in a way that can share. Like I love some of the social justice stuff that you're doing through the lens, but give us a little bit of background about how you got started in that work.
Yeah, well, first off, thank you so much again for having me here. It's such a pleasure. And I just want to say I love the work that you're doing, and even just having me on your show is, just so wonderful. Um, so my sort of start, if you will, is I'm originally from India. And I immigrated here to get my master's. This was
Mhm.
many, many years ago. And just growing up in India, I also went to a photography school. And a lot of my visual storytelling experience was just walking down the street with my camera and photographing people. So, right from the early days, that's how I connected with people, through storytelling and my camera,
Mhm.
and just being able to have conversations with everyday people and, get to know them at a deeper level. Because one thing I discovered was, at the end of the day, whichever skin we are in, we are all human beings with hopes and dreams.
Yes.
And that was something that I carried through for a good part of my life. And some of it also came from the way I was raised, with my parents that had that lens of equity growing up, where we had hired help in our house, servants that, did like a lot of jobs. But my parents were always really, they took care of them. So they took care of their needs. Sometimes, it was giving them extra money to go for a wedding that was happening in a family, or, my mom would actually help with homeopathic medicines when somebody was sick. So there were lots of like things like that, which were a part of my lived experiences
Mhm.
that really, I feel shaped me into who I am. And one of the things that I discovered when I came to this country, to the US, and I would probably fast forward many, many years later,
Yeah.
after we've been in some of the coaching circles and the circles where people sort of tap into personal growth, I just found that as a brown person, I felt like a minority in most of the circles. And there was a feeling of loneliness, of
Mm.
being somebody that, felt largely alone because there weren't that many brown women or women of color in the communities.
Mhm.
And I started feeling more and more that I wasn't having an opportunity to express myself in the way that I really wanted, because there was a part of me and my, um, you know, journey, even in getting here, and, all these layers of patriarchy, et cetera, that had kept me from using my voice. And
Mm.
then being in a culture where I felt I had to fit in, and my language perhaps was a little bit different from the language of that community, I found myself holding back until going through my own personal journey and realizing that I get to have my voice. I get to own my voice. And it's actually taken me quite a bit of work to get to
Yeah.
that place. And I also feel it's always like an ongoing journey. Once you're kind of down the path of
Mhm.
personal growth work, it is an evolution of
Mhm.
sorts. Um,
Well, let me
so
ask
that's
you
kind of
this.
been,
When you came to this country, how old were you when you came to the United States for was it your master's you said you came here for?
yeah. So I was 21 when I
Mhm.
first came.
And
And
did
it
you come
was
to the West Coast or like, where did you do your master's?
Yeah, so I came to the East Coast. So I was in Pennsylvania in
Oh.
a small town. And that was also a part of my culture shock, just being in a small town
I
from
can
Bombay, because
Yeah.
I grew up in a large city where my, experiences were so different. And we lived in a chaotic world, to being in a smaller town where not a lot happened,
Yeah.
So it
So
was
in
different.
that environment, when you first landed in the United States to do your studies, did you find a similar situation where there was not representation of brown people, especially brown people that came from India, if you will, in the school or the neighborhood that you ended up landing in?
So I found actually there was representation
Oh, good.
in the school, because I think in the academic universe there are lots of people of color that tend
Mhm.
to, especially from India, immigrants, et cetera. So there were, I wouldn't say it's like a huge community, but there was a core community that I got to connect with. And there are things like Indian clubs, et cetera, et cetera. So even in
Yeah.
my master's program, in my
Mhm.
class, there were at least a handful of people from India too, people that I'm still friends with today.
Oh, that's so
So there were a
cool.
few.
That's cool. So when did you move to Alpana and I live in the San Francisco Bay Area. So when did you move to the Bay Area?
So I moved to the Bay Area in 1996. So
Okay.
I came, so my trajectory from the east was moving west. So I settled in Chicago for a few years. Actually, before that was Peoria. And
Oh.
then from Chicago, I ended up in San Francisco. So San
Uh-huh.
Francisco literally was the place where I came for a visit, and I fell in love with the city, and I
Mhm.
decided this is where I was going to live. And I
Mhm.
think that's the beauty of being an immigrant. Also, often you don't have the roots, so you can, make your own story in that
Yeah,
sense.
yeah. And one of the things I love about the Bay Area, besides the weather being perfect, sorry to anybody who's watching from a cold place right now. I just found out it was 27 degrees in Texas. But the diversity, yeah, you have pockets that may not be as diverse as other, but I landed in Berkeley from the East Coast, and in the East Coast I worked mostly in New York City, so huge melting pot, diversity everywhere. And so I was very specific that when I moved, that I didn't want to be in an area that didn't have at least that same level or close to it of diversity, because I have a diverse family as well. And so we have the benefit of where we live. We can always find somebody who looks like us and who is
Yes.
successful that looks like us. But racism is how our country was built, and it's so much a part of the system. It is the system. It was founded upon racism, and even the minor changes that have happened over the years, it still has its core base in racism. And so tell me about any experiences, if you have any, that you can share where you felt the sting more than others in the work that you do, particularly as a brand photographer and working from some really high level publications. What has that journey been like for you?
Yeah, that's a great question. I feel like for me, a lot of my who I am personally and professionally just sort of mesh together. So my
Yes.
branding is holistic in that sense because
Mhm.
I bring in all my values of equity, diversity, inclusion into my brand, and that's what I help my clients do as well. One of the biggest challenges today is we as women entrepreneurs feel so invisible online because there's just so much noise. So I help my clients tell value aligned stories so they can,
Mhm.
you know, be truly themselves and make that impact and influence that they're wanting to make. Um, but often it can be hard, it can be uncomfortable to step into those spaces, especially when you're talking about things like race, equity, and those types of
Yeah.
things. Um, Now, I can think of a story, a recent story that, if it's okay, I'd like
Of
to
course.
share. And it's not necessarily a personal story, but just sort of being in spaces and my observation in that space. So recently, there was a private community group that I am in where somebody, a white person, shared that she had shared some sort of a reel on Instagram, and a woman in India reshared her reel in her feed, mind you, with credit, but that didn't sit well for the woman, which,
Mhm.
okay, that's her right to feel a certain way. But what she did was she publicly shared that in the Facebook group, asking people in that community to report her, and also that she had a conversation with this woman, and the woman was apologetic, and she, said she would, like, I think she was. I had a feeling. I have a feeling that she didn't really know that that was a no-no, also
Mhm.
for the
Is it?
as something to do.
Is it? I thought people wanted their reels and their stories shared.
Exactly. Exactly. So I think that was the first thing, but people sometimes don't know the ethics, etc., and it's also a personal thing. But
Mhm.
what really bothered me was this whole situation was so problematic because the leader of that group also seemed to support her stand, and all these women came on the thread and they were agreeing with her position. So for me, as a Indian, as
Mhm,
somebody that felt a kinship with
mhm.
the woman in India, I felt like I had to go in and say something and say that this was not okay to sort of start this witch hunt or whatever you want to call it.
That's what
So
it
there
feels
are
like,
things
yeah.
like these that are happening, which I feel need to be talked about. And it wasn't really putting the spotlight on it to make the white people wrong, but just to use it as an educational opportunity and know that we come from different places, we have different
Mhm.
cultural experiences, different lived experiences that shape who we are. So we have such a westernized thinking view out here that often people don't really understand that somebody in the East might have like a different lens or not
Yeah.
understand the culture, and how things are done out here. So
You know,
I
that's
feel like,
that's so important because it is the lens through which we see the world, and based on our early life experiences and the environment we grew up in, the level of privilege we have, we're all looking at things through different lenses, which is so appropriate for a photographer, right? To know about the different lenses through which you can see things through. And I find that a lot. What looks like curiosity to some person, to one person, I had, I talk a lot about how to create safe spaces to give voice to diverse, to give opportunity to diverse voices. And, you know, somebody had said something recently about being curious, that people of privilege can be curious. And I caution about a certain level of curiosity that can come across as a microaggression. For example, me as a woman of color, as an African American woman, you know, often our hair gets questioned. Like if you see my hair wet compared to you see it blow dried and styled, it's totally different. And the curiosity that has been a bone of contention with women of color a lot is, can I touch your hair? How do you get it like
mhm,
that? With all of the variety of styles that we can wear our hair and things that we can do with it. And yeah, that's curiosity, but it is also a microaggression. And I remember always thinking, why is my hair considered different and yours considered normal? When it comes to white women versus any woman of color, actually. And so it's interesting how we get to be a, I don't want to say educating, but an awareness kind of voice so that people can
mhm.
understand, just like you did with the woman, how it may land for a person in a different culture, and how any criticism of a person of color could lead to very different consequences than it would for a white person.
Exactly. Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. And your hair is gorgeous, Eva.
Oh, thank you, thank you. No, but what I'm saying is, when we talk about black hair, we have such versatility to our hair, whether it's natural, whether it's blow dried, whether it's straightened, whether it's curled. There's so many ways, and when a black woman wears their hair natural, it's we're kind of like a monkey in a zoo to a lot of white people. Like, oh my gosh, how do you get it that way? Can I touch it? What does it feel like? And it sounds like curiosity, but it's actually a microaggression. And it's really something that Black women are sensitive about because our hair is our crowning glory. And, the way we are looked at as being different, for lack of a better word, as if somehow it's not.
Yeah, I see what you're saying. It's different, and I heard that word a lot, even in my journey, where it would be about my food or
Mm,
something that people hadn't experienced before, and the label was different, which was a bit of curiosity, but it was almost like a no thank you
Yeah.
type of expression where it's different, so it's not in my usual toolbox. So I don't know if I want to touch it, try it, whatever it is,
Yeah.
right?
And different also means that what they do is normal.
Exactly.
That
Yes.
that's
Yes.
the underlying racial profile we could give to it. And and I always like to err on the side that it's not intentional.
Yes.
And a level of awareness, because when you come from a background of privilege, that is normal for you, and anybody else is different, whether they're black, brown, beige, yellow, whatever color you want to call it. If they're not white, everyone else is different. And the effect that has on us as human beings who are considered in that space of different, you know, has a psychological effect, has an emotional effect, has an effect on the level of success that some of us can and cannot achieve, because some of us may be more introverted and not stand up and not use our voices to speak up. And then some of us are loud and proud and out there and don't care who we offend. That's on a different human being level, how we show up. But the weight of microaggressions is heavy, and it does hammer us down over time. And some people
Yes.
can
Yes.
overcome that. Some people can rise through that better than others.
100%. So I feel like right now everything you said has landed for me, and one of the reasons why I have been stepping more and more into using my voice is one to, raise awareness and also have conversations with white people about equity and inclusion,
Mhm.
because we all live in space. And I feel for me, a lot of my drive also comes from my son. He is, he'll inherit this world, and I want this world to be a better place for him,
Mhm.
where people can see each other. People can actually see color instead of saying, "Oh, I don't see color." But we are, we
Yeah.
are people of color. I
Well, we
mean,
don't
right
say
now,
that with the
actually,
flowers, right? You can say that's a
yes,
beautiful red rose and look at that lovely yellow tulip. We see the colors and we
we
admire the
see the
beauty in
colors.
the
Yeah,
colors. There's beauty in the color.
there is so much beauty. And I love that, like being in the kind of the art design world, Pantone has created like shades of brown,
Yes, I
which
saw
is
that.
really amazing. So
Yes,
I was like, yes,
yes,
that's like
yes.
so
I did saw
beautiful.
that. I did see that because, yeah, I
Yeah,
remember as a kid that Crayola box that didn't have anything that was the flesh tone, like flesh tone pantyhose, flesh tone. It was like, no, that's not my flesh tone. How do I find something for my skin color? Well, you know what? I want to actually shift the focus a little bit more to your work. And when I read in your bio some of the things that you do to show the beauty of diversity, tell me a little bit more about that. Tell us a little bit more about that.
yeah. So one of the things that's been important for me, and I think this has also been rooted in my social justice beliefs, is to really showcase a diversity or to showcase representation through my work. So as an
Mm,
artist too, I have been a visual storyteller that has stepped into sharing stories of the gay community, going to the BLM marches and capturing, what I have out there. As an entrepreneur, I've photographed people of, different races, different skin types, different sexual orientations. And
mm,
I sincerely believe that having that representation in my work and actually showcasing it is really what brings a lot of people to me, because they can see themselves in my work, right?
mhm,
Because often there are people that speak about it, but you can't see it in their, work. And
Yes.
that's been a stumbling point for me too, is if I go to hire a white coach that looks completely different from me, I might feel a little intimidated about, hiring that person, because does she understand who I am, where I am coming from, my cultural, ethnic background? Has she ever worked with a brown person? Those are all the questions that go through my mind.
Mhm.
So that piece has been really important for me. And then the other work that I've been doing is with nonprofits. And you had mentioned that through my bio was Everyday Bay Area. So that's
Mhm.
a local Instagram account that I manage. And
Mhm.
it was actually started by Catchlight, which is a nonprofit that supports visual storytelling and artists. And now they're not connected anymore. So I took it over because it was going to die, and I just couldn't see
Mhm.
something that was kind of a heart
Mhm.
project, just to sort of die.
Mhm.
But we contribute. So there are now, like, I think 7 or 8 photographers, maybe less than that. I don't know the exact number, but we contribute stories of the Bay Area, around the Bay Area. And what it does, it puts a lens on different communities in the Bay Area, different topics. And for me personally, I have shared stories of the South Asian community, and
Mhm.
it really helps humanize people, because when
Mhm.
people see somebody that's a Sikh grandfather with his child at the temple, and just sharing a bit of his story or somebody else's story, it really helps people understand that we're essentially all human beings that have the same, hopes, dreams, desires,
Mhm.
and just kind of connect at that level. So that's been like a huge part of my mission, to amplify underrepresented voices in, and of course my community is also close to my heart, so I
Yes.
try to do what I can to support them and other communities.
Now, in your brand photography business, tell me a little bit about who an ideal client is for you, and what you bring out in helping people create their brand that showcases the humanity, individuality, and specialness of who they are.
Oh, that's wonderful. So I work a lot with women entrepreneurs. So, women entrepreneurs that are purpose driven entrepreneurs that feel that they aren't being able to be seen online. And I think
Mhm.
that's something which is a struggle for a lot of women, because we are in such a busy online space. There's just always so much noise online. So
Mhm.
basically, when I work with my clients, we go through sort of a deep dive process where they get to sort of tap into who they are on the inside, because even your images on the outside are really about who you are on the inside. And
Mhm.
that's really what makes you different. That's what makes you unique, because we could have like 10 performance coaches, but who you are uniquely is what gets to be
Yeah.
reflected in your branding. So
Mhm.
that's the journey we take. And often working now with my clients, I've seen that we all have so many limiting blocks. Women have limiting blocks where there's that not enoughness, there's that
Mhm.
feeling of um, you know, staying masked, or all these different layers that we kind of carry. So a lot of the work that we do is to dig into that so that they can come to that place of trusting themselves, and also getting to know me through the work that I do, especially if I'm photographing them,
Mhm.
because if you are in front of my camera with your guard on, it's a lot harder to capture you
Ah, I
than
hear that.
somebody that
Mhm.
feels safe for me
Mhm.
to see you in that embodied, beautiful, trusting, way, where you can look at your images and say, oh my God, these look and feel like
Like,
me. So
ah,
that's really what I want my clients to
it
have.
sounds like
And
such a beautiful experience to work with you. Alpana, how can
thank
people
you.
see your work? How can they get in touch with you? What can I put in the chat here?
So my website is my name. Right now it's alpanaaras.com. So it's my first name and last name without the king. So it's alpanaaras.com. And I'm in the process of rebranding now, but it's still a good way to get in touch with me through the website. And
Yeah,
I
and
do
we can
have
see
like
your work
a,
on there, right?
yeah, so it has most of my, my photography work. What it doesn't have right now is my coaching offerings that are
Mhm,
going to get incorporated on my website.
mhm.
But I also have like a freebie, which is a branding guide. So if
Oh,
anybody
okay. What's the
wants
link to
that,
that?
that's something
Is that
they
on the
can grab.
website that they can get, the branding guide?
Yes,
Okay,
yes.
perfect, perfect. All right, guys, get her free branding guide. I'm definitely going to be downloading it. It's such a pleasure to have you on today and to share your insights and your experience. And I can just see the light and passion in your eyes when you talk about the type of work you do for social justice, because we can all have an impact in the world with the gifts that we naturally have. And, Alpana's doing it with her photography. I'm doing it with, the group, The Intimacy of Race, writing a book and making sure that our stories get told, the history gets shared, so that we can really have a real perspective, awareness, and understanding of what some of these minoritized and underserved communities have been forced to endure along the years. So thank you to everyone who joined today. And if you're watching on the replay, just put hashtag replay. Share this out if you think it was helpful. And thank you, Alpana, for being my lovely guest today.
Oh my gosh, thank you so much, Eva. This was such a delight, and I truly appreciate all the work that you're doing and even just your gentle voice in the universe.
Oh,
I feel like doing, you're doing like a great service to the community. So thank you for that.
I'm trying. I'm trying my best. Thanks, guys. Have an amazing weekend, and I'll see you next Friday. Bye bye.